Is there a heavier silence than the one you feel when you're sitting alone? Even if the TV is on or there's noise outside, it's a quiet ache that many people experience. But fewer feel comfortable talking about openly. We often think of loneliness in old age as just being about being by yourself. Maybe because your circle has gotten smaller. While that's certainly part of it. What if there are deeper reasons, hidden truths about this feeling, that nobody really shines a light on? It's not just a simple matter of needing to get out more or join a club. Although those things can sometimes help, the reality of loneliness in later life can be much more complex. Rooted in things we don't always recognize or acknowledge, it can feel isolating in itself. This feeling of being lonely, because it seems like something you should just handle. But you're not alone in feeling this way. And understanding the full picture is the first step toward finding genuine connection and easing that ache. In this video, we're going to look at 5 hidden truths about loneliness in old age that often go unacknowledged. Unpacking these can help us understand the feeling better and find new ways to approach it, both for ourselves and for those we care about. Watch to the end, because understanding these truths can change everything. And there's one toward the end that might truly surprise you. So, let's start peeling back the layers on this feeling that touches so many lives, often in ways we don't anticipate. The first hidden truth is this: loneliness in old age isn't just about being physically alone. It's fundamentally about the quality, or lack thereof, of your connections. Think about it. You can be in a room full of people, at a family gathering, a community lunch, a senior center, and still feel profoundly lonely. This isn't contradictory. It points to the heart of the matter. We are wired for meaningful connection, for feeling seen, heard, and understood. Surface-level interactions, pleasant as they might be, often don't nourish that deeper need. You might exchange pleasantries, talk about the weather, or discuss common acquaintances. But if you don't feel like you can share what's really on your mind or in your heart, or if you don't feel genuinely interested in what the other person is going through beyond the surface, that feeling of disconnection can persist. This becomes even more apparent as life stages change. When you were younger, connections might have been built around shared activities, raising children, working alongside colleagues, volunteering for the school fete, cheering on the local sports team. These activities provided a natural structure for interaction, often with a shared purpose or goal. As those structures fall away, children are grown. You've retired. Physical limitations change what you can do. The opportunities for those kinds of ready-made, easy connections diminish. What's left often? It requires more intentional effort to build and maintain relationships, and to find people with whom you can share on a deeper level. Consider the friendships that might have lasted decades. They might have been built on shared history, but if your paths diverge significantly in retirement, or if your interests change, maintaining that deep connection requires adaptation. It's not enough to just reminisce about the past. You need to find ways to connect in the present. And that can be hard. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to share your current thoughts, feelings, and experiences, even if they aren't neatly tied up or universally relatable. If you feel like you have to put on a brave face or present a version of yourself that doesn't reflect your current reality, that creates a barrier to genuine connection. Think about the difference between having someone to wave to across the street and having someone you can call just to chat, or someone you can confide in when you're feeling down. The first is interaction. The second is connection. Loneliness often stems from a deficit in the latter. Even if the former exists, it's the feeling of not having someone who truly gets you, someone with whom you can drop the pretense and just be. This is a particularly hidden truth because from the outside, it might look like everything is fine. You might be busy, you might see people regularly, but internally, that deep well of connection feels empty. Adding to this is the second hidden truth. Loneliness in old age often stems profoundly from loss, a kind of grief that isn't always fully acknowledged or processed in the context of social connection. Losing a spouse is perhaps the most obvious and devastating example. The silence in the house, the missing presence at the dinner table, the absence of that built-in confidant and companion. This creates a chasm that goes far beyond just not having someone physically there. It's the loss of a shared life, shared memories, shared routines, and a shared identity. Friends and family offer comfort, but they cannot replace that unique bond. The loneliness that follows is interwoven with grief, and it can feel incredibly isolating, especially as time goes on and others might assume you've moved on. The grief for the person is one thing. The grief for the lost connection and the fundamental shift in your social world is another, and it's often less openly discussed. But loss isn't limited to a partner. It includes the loss of friends who move away, become ill, or pass on. Each departure shrinks your immediate circle of people who knew you in a certain way, who shared specific experiences with you. It's a gradual erosion of your established network. Then there's the loss of professional identity and the daily social structure that work provided. Retirement, while often anticipated and sometimes desired, can suddenly remove you from a community where you had colleagues, casual chats, and a sense of purpose that involved others. That loss of daily interaction, even if it was just water cooler talk, can leave a significant void. Furthermore, losing physical abilities can lead to a loss of connection. If you can no longer easily drive, participate in hobbies you once loved, or attend social functions that require mobility, your world can shrink. This physical limitation directly impacts your ability to connect with others in the ways you used to, leading to a form of loneliness born of capability loss. What makes this a hidden truth is that these losses of people, roles, and abilities aren't always framed explicitly as causes of loneliness. They're seen as unfortunate life events. But the specific, profound impact on your social connection isn't always the focus of conversation or support. People might offer condolences or practical help, but addressing the resulting loneliness requires acknowledging this deep, connection-specific grief. It's about recognizing that mourning the loss of a social role or the daily presence of casual acquaintances is just as valid as grieving a close personal relationship. This layer of loneliness, tied so closely to the accumulated losses that often accompany aging, is a heavy burden that many carry in silence, unsure how to articulate the specific ache that comes from a world that feels increasingly empty of familiar faces and shared histories. And that feeling of carrying this burden alone often makes it harder to reach out, creating a difficult cycle to break. And that feeling of a gap, the one left by loss and the lack of deep connection, often leads us to the third hidden truth. You might be unknowingly sabotaging your own connections without even realizing it, often driven by underlying fears or past hurts. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. As we get older, we might become more set in our ways, perhaps a little more wary or protective of our time and energy. Years of life experiences, including potential disappointments or rejections, can build up a protective shell. While intended to shield us from hurt, this shell can also prevent new connections from forming or existing ones from deepening. Think about the fear of being a burden. Many older adults, fiercely independent, are reluctant to ask for help or even accept invitations if they feel it inconveniences someone else. They might decline a dinner invitation because they worry about transportation, or not mention they're feeling down because they don't want to worry their children or friends. This desire not to impose, while understandable, can inadvertently push people away. If you consistently say no, people may eventually stop asking. If you never share what's truly going on, others may feel you don't trust them or aren't interested in a two-way relationship. Then there's the fear of vulnerability. Opening up to someone, sharing your feelings, admitting you're lonely or struggling. This requires courage at any age, but perhaps even more so when you've spent a lifetime learning to be resilient and self-sufficient. There might be a feeling that admitting loneliness is a sign of weakness, or that it will make you seem needy. This fear can keep conversations on a superficial level, preventing the development of the very depth of connection that combats loneliness. You might steer conversations away from personal topics, avoid expressing opinions that differ, or hold back from sharing your current experiences, especially if they involve challenges or difficult emotions. Past negative experiences can also play a significant role. Perhaps you were hurt by a friend, felt betrayed by a family member, or experienced a painful rejection. These memories can create a subconscious barrier, making it difficult to trust new people or even fully relax with existing acquaintances. You might anticipate being let down or misjudged, leading you to keep people at arm's length. This self-protective behavior, while born of a desire to avoid pain, ends up reinforcing isolation. It's a hidden truth because it's not something we typically do intentionally. It's often a subtle pattern of behavior, a way of being in the world that has developed over time as a survival mechanism, but which now works against the very need for connection. Recognizing these patterns, the reluctance to be vulnerable, the fear of being a burden, the automatic guarding of your inner world, is a crucial step. It's about understanding that sometimes the biggest barrier to connection isn't the absence of people, but the walls we've unknowingly built around ourselves. And this brings us to the fourth hidden truth. Society often dismisses elderly loneliness as normal, inevitable, or just a sad part of getting old. And this widespread attitude prevents individuals from seeking help and society from providing adequate support. Think about the common narratives we hear. The image of the lonely older person is almost a cliché. We see it in movies, hear it in offhand comments, while it reflects a reality for many. Presenting it as an expected or unavoidable state of being is incredibly harmful. It creates a sense of hopelessness and resignation. If loneliness is just normal for your age group, why bother trying to change it? Why admit you're struggling with something that's supposedly just par for the course? This societal normalization makes it incredibly difficult for older adults to voice their loneliness. There's a fear of being seen as complaining, as ungrateful for what they have, or as simply not coping well with aging. They might internalize the idea that they should just accept it and get on with it. This silence perpetuates the problem because it reduces the visibility of the issue and the urgency to address it. Family members, friends, and even healthcare professionals might overlook signs of loneliness because they've been conditioned to see it as expected. A doctor might focus on physical ailments without asking about social well-being. A family member might assume that because an older relative sees them occasionally, they aren't lonely, without understanding the depth of the need for connection. This hidden truth also impacts the resources available. If loneliness in old age is seen as an unavoidable personal problem rather than a significant public health issue, there's less investment in community programs, accessible social activities, and support systems specifically designed to foster connection for older adults. The focus often remains on physical health or practical needs, while the crucial element of social well-being is neglected. Furthermore, the narrative often places the onus entirely on the individual. They just need to get out more, or they should volunteer. While individual effort is important, as we'll discuss, this perspective ignores the systemic factors and the very real difficulties older adults face in maintaining and forming connections, especially when dealing with the losses and internal barriers we've already discussed. It dismisses the complex interplay of factors contributing to loneliness and simplifies it into a personal failing or an inevitable consequence of age. This hidden truth is particularly insidious because it not only allows the problem to persist, but actively discourages those affected from speaking out and seeking the understanding and support they desperately need. It's a quiet form of neglect, born not necessarily of malice, but of a failure to acknowledge the profound human need for connection at every stage of life and the unique challenges that arise in meeting that need as we age. Now, after thinking about these hidden aspects, the distinction between presence and connection, the profound impact of unacknowledged loss, the subtle ways we might hinder our own relationships, and the societal tendency to normalize this painful experience, it's easy to feel a bit disheartened. But understanding these truths isn't about dwelling on the difficulty. It's about illuminating the path forward. And this leads us to the fifth, perhaps most surprising. Hidden truth. Actively combating loneliness in old age often requires embracing vulnerability, trying things outside your established comfort zone, and understanding that finding meaningful connection in later life is a skill that needs conscious effort and new approaches, not just hoping things will get better on their own. We live in a world that often celebrates independence and self-sufficiency. Especially as we age, there's immense pride in being able to manage on your own. But the truth is, we are inherently social creatures, and needing connection is not a sign of weakness. It's a fundamental human need. The hidden part here is that meeting this need in later life, after the natural structures of work, family raising, and lifelong friendships have shifted or diminished, requires a different kind of effort than it did earlier in life. It's not as simple as just showing up. It involves being willing to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable means being open about your feelings, your fears, your hopes, even your struggles. It means letting people see the real you, not just the version you think they expect or the version you were decades ago. This can be incredibly challenging, especially if you're used to keeping a stiff upper lip. But deep connections are built on authenticity. When you share something personal, you give others permission to do the same, creating a space for genuine understanding and empathy. This might mean telling a new acquaintance that you're finding retirement challenging, or admitting to a friend that you miss your late spouse terribly. Even years later, it feels risky, but it's how bridges are built. Trying things outside your comfort zone is also key. The ways you connected in the past might not be available or effective anymore. This might mean exploring new hobbies, joining groups you wouldn't have considered before, or using technology to connect if that's a new frontier for you. It could be joining a book club, attending a local lecture series, participating in a gentle exercise class, or even exploring online communities centered around your interests. It requires stepping into unfamiliar situations, meeting new people, and being willing to navigate the awkwardness that can sometimes come with initial interactions. It's about actively seeking out opportunities for connection, rather than waiting for them to appear. Furthermore, recognizing that finding connection is a skill means understanding that it might take practice and effort. It might involve initiating contact yourself, rather than waiting for others to call. It might mean learning how to have deeper conversations or becoming a better listener. It might require letting go of expectations about what connection should look like based on past experiences and being open to new forms of relationship. For example, a deep connection might be found with someone much younger or from a completely different background than your previous friends. The hidden truth is that this isn't passive, it's an active pursuit. A continuous learning process. It requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to adapt. It's not about becoming someone you're not, but about being brave enough to put yourself out there in new ways, to express your need for connection, and to invest energy in building relationships even when it feels uncertain. This is perhaps the most empowering hidden truth, because while it acknowledges the challenge, it also points to the agency you have in addressing loneliness. It's a reminder that even when external circumstances are difficult, there are internal shifts and active steps you can take. So, we've touched on how loneliness isn't just about how many people you see, but the quality of those connections. How deep losses can leave a specific kind of ache that's often overlooked. And how sometimes we might unknowingly make it harder for others to connect with us through fear or past hurts. We've also talked about the way society sometimes shrugs its shoulders at older age loneliness, making it harder to speak up. And finally, the courage it takes to really bridge the gap by being vulnerable and actively seeking out new ways to connect. Understanding these truths isn't about feeling overwhelmed, it's about gaining clarity. Loneliness isn't a personal failing, it's a human experience, one that can be particularly acute as life changes and the familiar landscape shifts. It's something millions experience, and you are not alone in feeling its weight. But critically, it is possible to find more connection and ease that feeling. Remember, understanding these hidden aspects is the first step toward finding solutions that truly resonate. Small, brave changes in your perspective and actions can make a significant difference to your sense of connection and overall happiness. Think about one small thing you could do differently this week based on what we've discussed. Perhaps reaching out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while and sharing something a little more personal. Or researching one new local group that aligns with an interest you have. Or simply acknowledging to yourself that the loneliness you feel is valid and stems from real experiences. What resonated most with you among these hidden truths? Have you experienced any of these aspects of loneliness that felt difficult to talk about? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your perspective is valuable, and opening up can create a space for others to feel less alone too. And if you found this video helpful, if it gave you something new to think about or a sense of understanding, please give it a like. It tells me this kind of conversation matters to you and encourages me to create more content like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos where we explore ways to navigate the challenges and celebrate the joys of living your best life at every age. Thank you for listening. There is hope, and there are paths to connection waiting to be explored. Keep seeking them out, with kindness to yourself and gentle courage. Live your best life, fully and vibrantly, at every age.